Welcome to episode 24 of Last Turn. I'm Bart, and today I'm joined by Evan. How are you doing?
I'm simply splendid.
So can you believe that this is our third early meta review?
It's kind of unbelievable. Nah,
Yeah,
I guess not.
it's pretty awesome. I was thinking about that before we started recording, and it's really cool. We've been doing this for a little while.
Yeah, we started with Ungoro
Yes.
and theorizing how Firefly and Galactic Crawler would affect things.
Yeah, totally.
Probably underestimated those cards.
Definitely underestimated both of them. Definitely underestimated Glocker Crawler. That was, I think we explicitly mentioned that in some of our earliest discussions about Ungoro, and we weren't sure if it would be playable.
Turns out it was.
Turns out it was.
Turns out patches just kept getting better instead of getting worse.
Yeah, I think people discovered how good South Sea Captain is, and that just made patches like so insane.
Yep, five power and 5 health for 3 mana, 2 of which is charged. It's a good deal.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually kind of insane how people didn't catch on to that right away. I wonder why that is. I wonder if South Sea Captain has actually gotten better because it wasn't in the original Pirate Warrior builds, or like in the Small Time Buccaneer builds, or if people just didn't catch on to it.
I mean, it could be possible that as people caught onto it, they started changing their decks in a way that made it better.
Yeah.
Hard to say. But yeah, we Ungoroed and all of that, and then all of Frozen Throne, and here we are in the Catacombs.
Yep, we are Catacombsmen, Splunkers.
Or Splunkers.
In this new creepy world. So we wanted to talk a little bit about every class and what decks they're playing and which decks are especially good, and also talk about some of the places we maybe hit and missed in our set review, such as good powerful mechanics and also cards that we might not have brought up that turned out to be excellent.
There's definitely at least a few of those.
Oh yeah,
that I've been seeing.
Yeah, certainly, me too. I think that we did a good job overall of identifying some of the powerful cards in some of the classes, but I think we whiffed largely on the neutral cards, which is fine.
Yeah, that's. I think everyone agrees that's the toughest.
Yeah, I think so too, because they can kind of go everywhere, and there's a lot more interactions to consider. Although we did get some of them right. But anyway, so let's start with the classes that have the most powerful decks and what those decks are.
Alrighty.
So, this is just to give everybody sort of an overview of what the early metagame looks like, in the first week and a half, 2 weeks of this set, how things are shaping up. Obviously, this is by no means permanent. We don't think that this is sort of a tier list that will necessarily stay in place. This is more of just an observation of what the ladder's been like.
I mean, it's destined to change, really.
Of course, yeah. It always does. It changes. I mean, the metagame evolves constantly until the very last weeks of the set, and it's always been like that.
But if you want to, go in prepared now and also try and get an idea of what it's going to be like, these are the decks you want to look at the most, probably.
Definitely. So I think the first one to mention is Aggro Paladin.
I'm down to mention that first. I actually got Legendary with it last night.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome.
It was thank you, relatively easy. I was playing just South Sea Deckhand turn 1 many games, and it worked very well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really strong deck. It's a very, very powerful aggro deck that leans on a ton of low-cost minions, like Knife Jugglers, and just a bunch of 1-mana 2/1s like Akros Veteran.
The Juggler's back!
Juggler's back, yeah. Juggler hasn't been around. He hasn't seen the battlefield in a long time.
And, I mean, Righteous Protector is definitely a big reason why the deck is good, undeniably.
That card's insane. That card is so good. It was just, so obviously good when they printed it, because, Annoyatron was good. That card was playable.
And it's Argent Squire with another ability.
Yes, and the ability is Taunt.
Yeah, one of the most relevant ones for a Divine Shield. Like, if you look at other historically good Divine Shield minions, Sunwalker comes to mind.
Right. Noitron, like I mentioned.
Yeah, and Noitron, of course. Though Wax Elemental is missing something. It's
yeah.
That one power.
it's so yeah, the Righteous Protector is awesome. The fact that it has, Divine Shield is great because Divine Shield minions are strong. And the fact that it has Taunt means that as a 1/1, it's still relevant later in the game when it can eat 2 attacks.
Yeah, like two giant like bone mare and whatever's riding it.
Right. So that's been really strong. But
But
this is
it got it got two, I'd say, like huge cards from Kobolds.
um what, Agropal?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So which are those?
Well, the class specific one is Call to Arms. That card is insane.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So that I mean, we were kind of aware of how it'd be good in a Murloc deck,
Right.
and we're talking about Bluegill Warrior and how much tempo it would give you, but not Knife Juggler.
Yeah.
It turns
Right.
out that's really good. Direwolf Alpha with South Sea deckhand, like I was getting a 3 power deckhand a bunch of times. And how like they don't even need to be Murlocs at that point. Like if you're just getting 3 dudes, like as long as they're pretty good, if you're putting on a lot of pressure, you'll kill whatever you're playing against.
Right. Yeah, that's the fact that it's such a huge tempo swing. So we had talked about this card during our set review and identified it as something very powerful because you're getting, 3 to 6 mana worth of creatures off of Call to Arms. And so it could potentially let you cheat on mana and just, it's a really good tempo play for 4 mana, just
And
getting all the stats.
it's value also. You're getting 3 cards.
Yeah, yes, that's true. You're also getting 3 cards, and it's tempo. You're putting them on the battlefield right away. So it's kind of like it's like Collected Company in Magic. It's card advantage and tempo stapled to the same thing. It's actually a lot like Collected Company, it turns out. Uh,
Yep.
so this card is it lets you cheat on mana. It lets you cheat on tempo, and it's also awesome because sometimes the effects are like super additive. Like you get a Knife Juggler and some other guys, you actually end up throwing some knives around.
Yep. Or you can get, and Knife Juggler with South Sea deckhand patches. Like very often, we're gonna be
Yeah.
coming back to patches. And this is one of those cases. I was even playing against Murloc Paladins that playing very similar decks, but they would like assemble some Murlocs, and I just destroy all of them with Knife Juggler combos. And I just was making more guys. I have Lost in the Jungle, and they don't.
Right.
Um, and I have patches, and they don't. So I was able to keep them off minions without much trouble.
Yeah, I'd been playing the Murloc version of this deck a little bit, and I think it's weaker than the non-Murloc version. Like,
The non Murloc version is definitely like just balls to the wall, super fast aggro. Like 2 Atris veteran is so greedy, but it works.
yeah, yeah, I think that's good in the early stages of the metagame. Just playing a
Hmm.
really greedy aggro deck tends to do well because it punishes people who want to play like Void Lords and stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely particularly good right now because of that. And then I think what really makes the deck actually legitimately good is the combination of like Call to Arms and Divine Favor,
Hmm.
because I'm using 2 copies of both. So between those 4 cards, you just play a bunch of 1 drops and you never run out of stuff.
Right. So you mentioned that there were 2 cards that they got, Call to Arms, and what was the other one?
I'd say Corridor Creeper, which
Oh
is
yeah.
a card that it's probably the one we least appreciated relative to how good it is
Yes.
of
I
the
think that's
neutral
true of the entire
cards.
community, actually.
Yeah, it's just now in so many different decks. It's just a free 5/5. I
Yep.
think everybody missed that your opponent's minions dying would count toward it, and also just not appreciating how good a free 5/5 is. But in this deck, it's particularly good um, because you are making multiple minions with a bunch of your cards, and you kind of are expecting to trade and come out on top already, and then this is just a 5/5 on top of that. Um, and much like Divine Favor and Call to Arms, it's a way to mitigate a board wipe. Like you can kind of commit more. Like there've been a bunch of times where I had 2 creepers in my hand, and I just played everything else in my hand, and like they might have the board wipe, but then they're gonna need to deal with these guys.
Yeah, that's how I felt about the card too, is that it can act as insurance or it can help you just like push a board. But it's nice that
Hmm.
it's like a really big play that you don't feel bad about keeping in your hand or sort of are forced to keep in your hand when you've committed a lot to board
Hmm.
already. I like it a lot. I think it's awesome. I mean, Reynad did an entire video about him. So
Yeah.
People have caught on, as early as the first weekend of the set that card is really, really powerful, and it fits into a ton of decks, but it's really at home in this kind of deck where so much of the deck is just garbage minions that will die.
Yeah, and that's sort of how you use them, like to use them as removal.
Right.
Another thing that was really good against Murlocs and maybe Tempo Rogue, other minion decks, is the two Rallying Blades and two of the Unidentified Maul.
Right.
Because those weapons are relevant against their minions, and you can kill one or two of their guys with that. And then your Call to Arms, South Sea Deckhands, and South Sea Deckhand from your hand are both going to have charge. So they'll make a board, you play a weapon, and play a deckhand, and clear their board, and trade everything you have, and then you play Corridor Creepers.
Yep. Yep.
And there's like no winning. There's like you just always are able to put yourself ahead with that card. So that's been insane.
Yeah, it seems really strong. So I have a question for you about this deck. How has Valinir been?
Valinir has been rarely better than True Silver Champion.
I see.
But it has been a few times.
Sure.
Like there was a time where I got it on a Leroy Jenkins, and that allowed me to win when I otherwise wouldn't have.
Right.
But that hasn't happened that many times.
Yeah, because I'm looking at that's actually been the barrier to me playing this version of the deck is that I don't own Valinir. I had a feeling that like maybe the final most streamlined version of this deck wouldn't be running that card, but and I'm actually seeing on HS Replay some of the builds of this deck do not have Valinir, so that's interesting to hear that.
I think honestly, Spikered Steed would probably be a lot better, if not a little bit better.
Sure. Okay, I can see that.
So yeah, no, I was definitely like also not sure about it. Is it going to be stupid, or is this like exactly what this deck always needed?
Right.
I think Corridor Creeper and Call to Arms are exactly what the deck always needed, and
Sure.
Valinir is more like a Deathstalker Rexar, just sort of awkwardly sitting at 6 mana. Like,
Right.
we have our Savannah Highmane. It's called Spikered Steed. I think I'm just going to play that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
But I think I'm gonna at least probably play it a bit more, but Steed is probably better.
Yeah, I'll have to give it a shot. This deck obviously looks really strong. So like I said, I've been playing the Murloc version, and one thing I noticed about that deck, which also seems to be true about this one, is so many of your cards are keepable.
Yeah, I eventually started being a little bit less, or a little bit more greedy, and be like, I can actually mulligan these 1-drops. I have better ones.
Right. But I mean that's just like a really awesome spot to be in, where on coin you can just mulligan so much of your hand, or like you don't even feel bad keeping cards like Corridor Creepers because you know that you're just going to draw so many playable cards.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because I was, snap keeping all of my Corridor Creepers by the end of it. But you're right, it's not just because of how that card is, it's because of how the deck is.
Right. And that's something I noticed playing the other version. And this one looks like it's got even more keepable cards. You have so many 1-drops in here that the Murloc version just does not have.
And like Lost in the Jungle, like between Lost and your Divine Ship guys, Acker's Veteran winds up having a lot of targets, and Direwolf Alpha works out pretty frequently.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, this deck obviously is very strong. It looks really strong. It's a really good early metagame deck. It's just degenerate aggro, and that tends to do really well. And I think that this will set the speed of the format. These kinds of decks tend to do that.
Yeah, this is a little bit Pirate Warrior-y.
I think so too. It looks like it. What's nice is that it sort of leans on it's leaning on a class card, so we might not see this deck in other, lots of other classes, which is good. As Reynad, predicted that Corridor Creeper and Patches would just show up in every class, which I think they can, but
it looks like plurality.
Yeah, for sure. This one looks like it's maybe the best shell for that.
At least for now.
For now, yeah. These things change. This is the early metagame, so who knows what we'll see as tournaments happen and as the weeks go on, and we start to see meta reports, which end up shaping what people are playing, and et cetera, et cetera. It ends up iterating on itself, but it looks really strong now. It looks like it's really good for free wins. But there have been some other good ones on the ladder.
Hmm.
Another one that I've been seeing a whole lot of is Cube Lock.
Hmm. Yes, me too.
Yeah, so this is a control warlock deck that leans heavily on a lot of the control cards that Warlock got in Kobolds and Catacombs, and just some of the other really good cards like the Vulgar Homunculus and the Librarian, as well as their Spellstone, which is just like a lifesteal removal spell, and Carnivorous Cube, which is a 6 mana 4/6
Hmm.
that destroys a friendly minion when it comes into play, and its death rattle is that you summon 2 copies of that. It uses that with Doomguard to try to just like cheat on charge minions and do a ton of damage to you over a short period of time.
It sounds pretty stupid, but
Definitely.
you'll feel even stupider when you lose to it. And
Yeah.
it appears to work because it's beaten me, and it seems to be like representing on statistics.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people on HS Replay, it's doing pretty well. It's been, popular and has a positive win rate there. But a lot of people have been talking a lot about the deck, and it seems to be very strong. And I mean, I've lost to it a ton. I've lost to actually various forms of the Warlock control decks, but I think Cube Lock is the one that has the most potential to beat Priest.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things I noticed because I was playing Rizakis
Yeah,
earlier in right. That was one of the first things I was playing when the set came out. And I always felt extremely confident against Warlock until all of a sudden one of them just blew me up with Doom Guards.
right,
And I was like, well, that's not going to happen again. And then
right.
it did. And like, wait a minute, is this really a thing? It's a very
Yeah.
whimsical situation, a cube, a green gooey cube eats your demon and craps out 2 more.
Yeah, it's pretty silly.
And it uses silly cards. I think some are using the weapon, the warlock weapon.
Yeah, actually,
Uh,
like all the control versions are using that card, which is surprising but awesome.
Skull of the Minari or something like
Yes.
that.
Yeah. So it's 5 mana 0/3, and at the start of your turn, you put a demon from your hand into play.
It just sounds so slow because you got to wait a whole turn. But if you're getting a free Doom Guard that is really, really good, or a free Void Lord, I mean, ultimately the payoff is just so good, and
Yeah.
because of the Spellstone, you have a lot more ability to swing your life back.
Yes.
Um, and actually, Dark Pact. There's definitely a lot of different ways to build this deck. I don't think it's like figured out yet.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of different ways to sort of do different combos. And one of them is Dark Pact, which is another new card that's really great for this deck for triggering the Death Rattle on the cube. You
Yeah.
can
Definitely.
play your cube to destroy your Doom Guard, and then immediately, if you have 1 more mana, get your 2 Doom Guards, so you can immediately pull that off. And you get 8 health, which is very important when a lot of your
Relevant.
cards kind of don't do anything, and you're getting
Yeah.
smacked in the face.
So Dark Pact, 1 mana, destroy a friendly minion, restore 8 health to your hero. So actually, this is a really good time to mention that I think Warlock is the class winner as far as playable cards in Kobolds and Catacombs.
I think I agree.
Like, so looking at their list of cards, I think all of them are playable. But highlighting the ones that I think are commonly played, that would be Dark Pact, Kobold Librarian, Vulgar Homunculus, Lesser Amethyst Spellstone, Possessed Lackey, Skull of the Minari, Rin the First Disciple, surprisingly, and Void Lord. So all of those cards are, I guess Rin and Dark Pact probably don't go in the same deck, but all of the other cards I mentioned go in the deck that we're talking about. Cube Lock, they also go in the Rin Control version, which is just not one that runs Carnivorous Cube, or Doomguard, really. It might run Doomguard, but instead it just runs control cards and Rin to try to beat you with that and just make it so your opponent can't win the game and then you eventually win the game.
I
Um,
think I think one of the consistencies between the two decks, maybe, or well, actually, this might not even be true. So another cute thing you can do now is Possessed Lackey with only really giant demons in your deck.
yes,
I think the Rin version might only use Void Lord. Once again, it depends. But the Cube one will definitely also use Doomguard.
yes,
And
yes.
then something that you can do in, once again, both decks if you want to, is use Master Oakheart to cheat out Void Lord or cheat out Possessed Lackey or cheat out Possessed Lackey. It can also get you your Rin.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Oakheart's been good. I mean, that card didn't stand out to me at all. It just looked like a 9 mana 5/5, which doesn't look good. But it turns out that it's actually great in this kind of deck. So Warlock's really a big winner. I mean, the two cards I didn't mention in that list just then were Cataclysm and Hooked Reaver. Cataclysm's a card that I still think, if you're playing Quest is good, but I just think that Quest is bad compared to everything we're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
And Hooked Reaver is like not a bad card, really.
It's not awful. It's a 4 mana 4/4 demon.
Right.
That when you need a taunt, is taunt.
Yeah, yep. It's got taunt under some conditions. It's not like horrendous, but I just think that Warlock really won. So many of their cards are awesome and go in the same deck together.
Yeah.
But yeah, Q-Block's been really strong. I'm wondering, whether that deck's going to stick around and how the most refined list will look and how greedy they're going to be on their cube combo. Because right now what we're seeing is a control shell that sort of has the cube combo in it, but if you're playing an aggro deck, you could just lose before the Doom cards come out.
Yeah, you only have the 2 Defiles, and that's pretty much your only good out. Like, things are getting Divine Shield and stuff, and you can't really count on Hellfire.
Yeah.
So that matchup is definitely going to be impactful.
Yeah, definitely. That's very interesting. So, other class I've been seeing a lot is Priest.
That's definitely true, and both of these classes are playing mostly slow decks, which I think is part of why Paladin was so effective. The super fast aggro Paladin.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I was seeing a lot of Zoo in the first few days in Warlock, but mostly now I'm seeing Q-Block builds.
Yeah, with Rin, without Rin, just Warlock control some kind of something.
Yeah. This is up around like rank 4-ish that I'm seeing this.
Yeah, I was seeing that exact same thing.
So yeah, Razakis is probably the most common priest build that I'm seeing right now.
For a while, I was seeing more Big Priest actually at rank 4, but then it became almost exclusively Razakis.
Yeah. So I think both decks are good. Big Priest is sporting a positive win rate like as usual because that's just what that deck does. But it also got the Spellstone, which was a pretty decent improvement. It gave the deck more gas, which is kind of what the deck needed.
Yeah, especially to like even when it's good matches. That's kind of the thing it could not have sometimes. It just had this inconsistency, and that helps a ton.
Well, that's what the deck is built on. I think it's a deck that you have to, in order to play it, you need to just not tilt when you don't draw the cards you need, because some games you're just going to do absolutely nothing and your opponent's going to crush you, and other games you're just going to Barnes you charge, and on turn 3, and then Eternal Servitude on turn 4.
Yeah, those ones aren't close.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what the positive win rate of this deck is. It's just that you're flipping a slightly biased coin, and sometimes you draw the cards you need and it's really hard to lose, and other times you don't. Granted, I do think actually some of the slower games have a lot of decisions to be made, such as when you should go deep and when you should hold back some of your resources against decks with board wipes like Razakis. But ultimately, I think it's a free win deck that sometimes just gets losses and other times it gets easy wins.
Yeah, it's definitely got that. It also got another really great card. You're probably going to mention it, Psychic Scream.
Oh yeah, yep. That's a good one.
They get to use, unlike Razakis, they get to use 2 copies, right. And it's just a devastating board wipe. That's perfect, especially on, they're so limited on the minions that they can use, so they're really grasping for good spells, and sure enough, they got a really nice one.
Yeah, Psychic Scream has actually turned out to be awesome, so it looked good. Obviously, 7 mana Twisting Nether is excellent, but Psychic Scream is nice because it's kind of like Silence stapled to Twisting Nether.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, it doesn't trigger Death Rattles, which, could be a downside potentially for Priest. And actually in this deck, the fact that your minions aren't dying is relevant because you can't Eternal Servitude them right back, so you have to be judicious about when you're using your Psychic Scream. But being able to not trigger your opponent's Death Rattles is also really good. It makes Void Lords a lot worse. Makes Carnivorous Cube a lot weaker. So there have been a lot of games that I've won as Priest by just focusing on killing their Doom Guards, and then they maybe get one into play and then cube it right away. And if you just Psychic Scream that cube, like they don't have any more gas.
Yeah, it's an ace in the hole against
Yep.
all the slow Warlock decks because they're all investing a lot of resources into these silly death rattles, or even just cards that they're expecting to bring back as their demons with Gul'dan.
Right.
And you can totally give them the shaft.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this deck, that card shafts a lot of decks. It's really good, and I mean, it's obviously good against aggro because it's board white. Like, it turns out to be really excellent in a lot of scenarios. I like it a lot. I mean, I'm sure there's even situations where you could just use it to put duplicates into your opponent's deck if they're playing singleton. Like, that probably won't be relevant that often, but it's it's a funny thing that you could potentially do. It's got a lot of play to it. It's got a lot of subtlety.
Yeah, I actually didn't think of that. That's definitely a sneaky way to use it. I had a demoralizing moment where I was playing against a priest last night, and I got them pretty low, and they Psychic Screamed me at one point, but I kept going, and then there was a turn where I needed to draw something relevant, and I drew a Silver Hand Recruit.
No,
no. I'm like, oh yeah, those are in my deck now. Concede.
Yep. Right. Yeah, that's just like sometimes you could just ruin your opponent's deck. And I mean, if you hit them with a dead draw off of Psychic Scream, like it just got even better. That's not going to happen that often, but it is probably going to make your opponent's deck slightly worse on average because you're jamming the tokens of whatever they built in there, like Silver Hand Recruit.
Yeah, like because of the nature of when you have to use it, it's almost always there's a bunch of annoying things, and then you can. That means it's very rare only using like two things, so the impact on the deck is easier to measure.
Yeah, definitely. It also kind of undoes the deck thinning that like Call to Arms does. That's gonna take out some of your weaker, lower mana cost plays from the deck and put them onto the battlefield, and that means you're more likely to draw like your more expensive stuff that will matter more in the late game. Or in the mid game rather, because the deck kind of just the aggro paladin deck doesn't really have a late game. So if you Psychic Scream all that stuff back into the deck, you sort of undo that thinning.
Put that back.
Yep. I mean, these are all really small, percentage to percentages we're talking about here, but still worth mentioning. Yeah, so priest. Those are probably the three classes I've seen the most of: Paladin, Warlock, and Priest.
I mean,
think that
there's also Dragon Priest. Though I feel like I've been seeing a lot less of that than I expected.
Yeah, same here. I played it a lot in the first few days. I played it like pretty much right away. I put together a build and it worked really well. And then I used it to. I eventually added South Sea Captain and Corridor Creeper to it.
Makes sense.
Yep, and I was running a 26 minion Priest deck, which is pretty awesome. And I think now there's actually a 28 minion deck running around. It's even better. That runs Spiteful Summoner and Mind Control.
Oh my lord! I had seen one with the 8 mana Free from Amber. I hadn't seen Mind Control yet.
Yeah, Free from Amber might just be better. But anyway, so I was running a build of that took me to rank 5, and it's been it's good. Dustbreaker is a really good card. It was especially good when a lot of people were playing minion based decks, like seeing a lot more aggro paladin and a lot of secret mage and stuff, and like Dustbreaker is just that like ends secret mage. All of secret mage's minions except the crystal runner die to it. So
yeah, you completely set this to the Stone Age, and you can even get around, like get past some secrets with a not too big of a minion, which can be valuable in that matchup. But I think partly like there's just there's Q block and the Warlock control decks and Rizakis and all that silly nonsense, and Dragons wants to be playing against other aggro decks and smashing them. So that's maybe one reason that it's less. It's not around as much right now, but if there's going to be more aggro paladin, then we could expect to see more of it.
Yeah, that's actually exactly how I feel. So I really, when I saw that aggro paladin was doing well, that's when I started playing Dustbreaker, because like when you build a Dragon Priest deck, you could run 4 board wipes if you want. You could play Dragon Fire Potion and Dustbreaker. You probably don't play Potion, turns out, but you could. And but Dustbreaker itself is just awesome, and that card will absolutely ruin a load of the ground aggro deck. You could end up taking so many cards out of their hand just with that. They invest their whole hand in the board because they nut drew, and you can Dustbreaker and just like set them to the Stone Age. You could ruin them. That could end the game on the spot. But that deck just has like no game against Void Lords.
Yeah, there's not really like that's that's the perfect way to stop you. Is just degenerate, reanimating taunt minions.
Right.
You can beat normal stuff. Like the Dragon Priest is set to beat normal mid range aggro. Can't get around 3/9s that come back.
Yeah. Right. It's the fact that they come back. You can stop. It's like a little bit like Obsidian Statue. You can stop like the first one and probably like recover from it, and then the second one comes around and you're like, okay, fine, just I'm going to concede and play the next one.
You got this one. And one more thing with Dustbreaker is that the Netherspite Historian, well, it's just against aggro decks and hooking you up with extra copies also.
Yeah.
It's almost like you have more than the 2 copies in your deck.
Yeah, and that's really strong. I mean, the Netherspite Historian is powerful for a lot of reasons. Like the stats are non-negligible against load of the ground aggro deck. 2 mana 1/3 is like not good, but it's not horrific.
It's good against Acker's Veteran. So
yeah,
right. So if that starts showing up a lot, then maybe try some dragons.
Yep. So that's been a deck that I think is worth keeping on the radar. The dragon package is really good, and it's something I think we'll see more when Raza rotates.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's like, it's worth keeping in mind that a lot of these synergies are here. Although I think Operative goes too, so that's gonna hurt. But anyway, we might see more dragons. Maybe we'll see something even better than Dragon and Operative. I don't think that's possible though.
Yeah, I'd be okay with not.
Actually, something that's worth pointing out is Standard is the strongest that it will be right now. Like,
this is true.
And because there's the largest number of sets, so the year of the, what is it, Mammoth that we're in? So year of the Mammoth Standard is as strong as it's going to be because there's such a large number of sets. This is like when I think like Draconid Operative and Blackrock Mountain, those are the BRM set was legal at the same time as Draconid Operative. That was another time where Standard was as strong as it could be, and it's just like shocking that all these cards can be out at the same time. Dragon Priest was really good then, and now we have a case where there's just a large number of cards available, and we get to see some of the strongest things that can happen in Standard. So it's an exciting time, very high power. You don't have to go to Wild if you want power now. You can stay in Standard. So
stay where it's comfortable.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. This is basically the last batch of seasons before a new Standard. So.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
Get
I'm ready. I'm ready for rotation, but we can talk about that later.
Now that the set came out, I'm ready. I'm ready for rotation.
Right. I mean, it's fun, but like I really just don't like clicking Rizakis Priest and then the play button. So I'm excited to not do that. Though I'll probably just do Aggro Paladin and tell them to go home. Anyway, there have been some other decks, other classes that have powerful decks, though maybe not as strong as the ones we just highlighted.
Yeah, I'd say those 3 are definitely the top 3.
I think so too. That's how it feels. So I think Mage was actually a pretty big winner here.
Yeah, the Secret Mage deck was definitely like crapping on me a lot more than I expected when everything first came out. The Cabal Lackey showed up, which is cool because as like an unplayed card, and it turns out with explosive runes, it's like,
yeah,
what do I do now?
Yeah, so Cabal Lackey works with the deck for a lot of reasons, because one of the first decks I tried was just like cutting. I don't even know what card I cut. I'd cut some card and put in Alaneth, and that was like Secret Mage. I was just playing Secret Mage from last season, but I cut a single card and put in Alaneth.
Fair enough.
So it turns out that when you run that card, you want to run less expensive stuff. So Cabal Lackey fits in really well because it costs 1 mana, and it helps you dump your hand and like helps you just go faster. And because you're playing a faster deck, a card like Explosive Runes, which is mostly like destroy a minion, do a bunch of damage to your opponent, that card, or just burn your opponent for a ton and kill like a tiny thing, that card is awesome in a fast like burn your opponent's face type plan.
Yeah, so, I didn't appreciate how much even just like nailing a Firefly is like devastating, and it's another thing they need to spend their mana on. Like
Yeah,
the amount of tempo you get out of explosive runes is quite large.
yeah. It's like it turns out to be about as much tempo as Mirror Entity, but also a bunch of damage.
Yeah, it could be like if they play a one health guy, it's kill command, 3 mana for 5 damage. That's good.
Yeah,
That's a good
totally.
rate.
So it's hard to play around it, the same way you could play around Mirror Entity. So that card's been awesome. Very surprisingly so. I thought that Mirror Entity would actually be mostly better, but turns out Explosive Runes is just great.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's excellent keeping their guy off the board. It can be like especially mean on certain turns. Like you want to play a 6 health minion on turn 4, and they have a secret out. And you're like, oh my, how bad is this gonna
yeah,
feel?
yeah, definitely. It's pretty tough. It's pretty tough to sort of play around the Secret Mage now because their secrets are all so strong and so annoying. But Cabal Lackey, Alaneth, of course, it's also running Corridor Creeper. There are some builds that have my build at least has Leroy Jenkins in it.
Oh
Uh,
my.
yeah, it goes. The deck can go pretty deep on damage, and Alaneth just gives it the ability to close the game out because if they get to untap with that card, that card triggers twice and they're not dead. It's really tough to beat them.
Yeah, especially with the low cost of their cards, they're gonna be able to play everything. Might even have an ice block in there.
Yep.
I mean, it's exactly what they want to do is sort of dump their hand and get secrets out to punish you and make everything hard for you at the beginning of the game, and then just use that early edge to win. Um, Alaneth and Explosive Runes really enabled all of that, and in fact,
Yeah.
Alaneth is in a way a lot like the Aggro Paladin deck, which is using a bunch of cheap stuff in Divine Favors. This is using a
Right.
bunch of cheap stuff in Alaneth. Very similar
Yeah.
idea.
Definitely. Yeah. The idea being that you can you just play out your entire hand and then use a really powerful draw spell, and that way you get card advantage and you end up spending more mana and playing more cards than your opponent, and that's a really good way to just have more powerful things than them.
And Corridor Creeper. I, I mean, that was also like if you're playing Zulok or if you're playing Dragon Priest, if you're playing this. So I think so far every class has had a Creeper deck that we mentioned.
Yep, Creeper is crapping on Hearthstone. It is a really strong card. I mean, you know, um, like I'd mentioned earlier, Raynad made this video all about Corridor Creeper. It's worth checking out. It's very interesting,
hmm
but talks about how Corridor Creeper is basically a free or extremely cheap 5/5, and a lot of minion-based decks can very easily cheat him into play because they spend the first several turns just playing minions, and if you're playing a minion mirror, then your opponent's doing the same thing, and you just crash all your minions into your opponent, and then you play a Corridor Creeper, and whoever has the first Corridor Creeper will win. So
Yeah, it's not like
it's
they're playing Dragonfire Potion for the most part.
right. And it's not quite that degenerate. It's certainly not. I don't think the metagame has been as degenerate as thus far that as Reynad claimed it would become. But I think he's definitely right that Quarter Creeper is incredibly strong and should go into every minion based deck along with patches.
Yep. It's
Uh,
synergy with patch is definitely also part of it.
yeah. So actually, my Secrets Mage deck also has South Sea Captain patches in it.
It
Um,
works.
yeah. Yep. It's been awesome. I mean, patches is good. South Sea Captain's good. So everyone's happy. So that's interesting deck. I have seen or at least heard about this legendary big spells deck. I think it was popular in the first like 2 or 3 days of the expansion,
Mm.
and then died out. Mostly playing like Spiteful Summoner and Dragoncaller Alana and like Pyroblast, Firelance Portal, Meteor, Blizzard, Flame Strike, those types of cards. The big, impactful, expensive spells that Mage has access to.
That sounds pretty fun. I guess it would use Dragon's Fury. That'd be like the only way that card would be good.
Yep. Yeah. You also run that for just like access to a cheap board wipe. Of course, it's an ice block deck, which unfortunately is a non-bow with all your other big spell synergy, but ice block, so it's worth it.
And Arcanologist assists.
That's true. Arcanologist definitely helps get that out of your deck. So that's something that I have not seen any of now. Like
Yeah,
I saw that in the first few days of the expansion.
I completely
Unsurprising.
missed that one.
Yeah. Um, But so yeah, I guess there's not too much to be said there. So I don't think that that's going to really stick around. I think like the way to do Control Mage is probably to do actually, yeah, something else. Another way to do Control Mage is Quest. So there have been a few Exodia builds I've seen. There's Exodia builds that run the Quest. You know, they're just like the last expansions. They are ultimately trying to assemble Sorcerer Apprentice and what's his name?
Oh, Archmage Antonidas?
That's the one. Can't believe I forgot
Archibald.
that. Yeah, so Archibald, the Antonidas. So Antonidas, Sorcerer's Apprentice, and spells, and like two of that copy spell. Molten Image? Is that it? No.
It is.
Oh, okay. I know.
Oh, wait, no, Molten Reflection. You were
Molten
right.
Reflection. That was close enough.
Yeah, everyone knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So it tries to get those cards and ultimately just make a bunch of free fireballs and kill the opponent. And the quest helps to give the quest basically gives the deck mana. So you're playing some of those cards on the first turn and then using your Time Warp and then playing the rest of them on the next turn.
Right.
So there's been another build of that deck that does not run the quest but runs Leyline Manipulator, which is a 4-mana 4/5 that reduces the cost of cards that didn't start in your deck that are in your hand by 2.
Yeah, it's a battle cry, so that means it's just like you play it and that's applied, and even if he dies, that doesn't matter. It's not like a static effect like Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not just spells. I totally thought it said spells, but it's any card that didn't start in your deck.
Yeah, and that's really strong.
Very relevant here.
It is relevant because the deck also runs Simulacrum to copy its Sorcerer's Apprentices, and the Simulacrum copies will be their cost will be reduced by Leyline Manipulator.
So you can basically make some free Sorcerer's Apprentices, and then you don't like you just mentioned. The only purpose of the quest is to save your mana. Now the Manipulator's doing it instead.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been that seems like interesting, and that's another approach to the Exodia combo deck, though it seems like it might be a little bit more clunky, although not having to deal with the quest seems awesome.
Yeah, not being down the card, and also not needing to care that you haven't played spells that didn't start in your deck. I haven't really been seeing this list, but it's possible that if there were more control decks, it would be more popular.
Yeah, definitely. So that's I agree. I mean, if we're seeing more slow decks that take a while to win the game, then this kind of Exodia like combo deck would just be a lot better. So we'll see what shakes out ultimately, but for now I think Secrets is the big mage deck.
I'd agree.
So Rogue has actually been pretty interesting. I've seen a lot of builds of Rogue, but I think maybe the best ones are just tempo-based Rogue decks, just like standard tempo decks with good cards.
Yeah, that's the only thing I saw at like higher ranks. I didn't see anything besides Tempo Rogue, and it's definitely Tempo Rogue plus Corridor Creepers is really good. The Minstrel is definitely also a good card in the deck.
Yeah, I felt like that had to be good, but it was understated, so it's hard to know. Then again, the deck was willing to run Zeril, or like Prince Valinar, and these are cards that are like okay, but they're not amazing, and they just managed to fit in the deck because it had some free slots. So the Minstrel feels like it could fit in there, at least, if that was the only card that was added in the expansion, you'd probably put it right in the deck. But there were other cards, and it turns out that even with the other cards, the Minstrel's good. Just drawing gas is awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of like as simple as the deck is just play good cards, and then the Minstrel means that instead of playing more cards that could be worse, you can play him and he'll get you the good minions you're already playing. So he can get you the Bone Mares and the Corridor Creepers, or your Edwin Van Cleef, like if you just instead of watering the deck down with minions you're kind of not stoked on, you just get to use this guy and get the ones that you really like Prince Kalisith. And he also just works really great with Prince Kalisith because he'll get you minions that got pumped by it if you Kalisith that game.
Right. He's also a good Shadow Step target. Really good Shadow Step target.
Yep. Can also sniggle that. It's not that hard to get the combo off with him. I think that's definitely the best Rogue deck. I didn't see much besides that.
Yeah, so I saw some silly stuff at rank 4. Like I saw people going really deep into Kingsbane, running even that thing like give your weapon lifesteal.
I did see one Kingsbane deck which I lost to.
Yes, me too. I also lost to
It
it.
was pretty brutal.
It felt terrible. I got them to like 4, and they're just like, I have a 7/3 weapon that I'm gonna just keep playing, and it has lifesteal. What are you gonna do? And I lost. So,
Did he use Doomerang?
yeah, he did.
Oh my god, I think
It felt even worse.
yeah, that sounds really bad. Luckily, my opponent did not play that, so I still had my soul.
I sure didn't. It felt pretty terrible to lose to a Doomerang and like the lifesteal card, but what are you gonna do? You're gonna lose to that deck sometimes, I guess. So also supposedly, I think like Mr. Yagut, he got to Legend with Miracles. He's like some professional rogue player. Very often plays rogue and variants of Miracle rogues at high ranks in all expansions and tends to do well. So he got Legend with Miracles. Take that for what it is, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, it looks like the class got some good cards for that, like the Falderai Strider. And the Kingsbane deck that I played against was using like Cold Light Oracle, and it was sort of like a mill rogue combined with Kingsbane. So that was kind of like cute, but ultimately like Evasion and Valera were all pretty relevant late game. So that makes me think the same would be true for Miracles deck.
Yeah, I know that the build that Yagut got Legend with was actually a lot more aggressive and low to the ground. They topped off at Auctioneer, so it wasn't going super duper deep. It was trying to like Shadow Step Leroy and kill you with it. But it seems, yeah, I mean you could potentially have slower Arcane Giants type Miracles builds that might do really well and use Evasion. Evasion's kind of bad though with cards like with decks like the aggressive Paladin deck running around.
Yeah,
so
and just Miracles strategy in general.
Yeah, where they can sort of trigger it and then trigger kill you the next turn like pretty easily. It's not like a lot of decks are just going deep on one turn, and I think that's where Evasion's probably at its best.
Definitely.
But yeah, Falderai Strider turned out to be a really good card. That also slotted right into the tempo decks, which is good because they sort of had a dead spot at 4, and they got 2 really good 4-mana plays, which is awesome because it just takes the curve of the deck a little lower.
Yeah, I didn't try it in the Tempo Rogue deck, but I could see it working.
Yeah, it's just getting free 4/4s. Cheating on mana is a really good way to win the game, and sometimes this just helps you get free 4/4s, and that's awesome. Hunter has sort of fallen off a little bit, I think, as it tends to do, but it does have 2 really interesting builds. The first is, of course, Face Hunter, which is just running like Dire Maul, Candle Shot, South Sea Deckhand, and
that
minions.
The 7-mana beast.
Which is that?
Corridor Creeper.
Oh, that one, right.
In case we didn't bring that up, the Corridor Creeper is also a beast, which makes it excellent in Hunter. It also makes it the 6th out of 6 classes using that card.
Yep. Yeah, so that is that deck saw some play in the beginning, although I think it's just considerably weaker than Aggro Paladin.
It basically seems like bad Aggro Paladin. Like Aggro Paladin, right. I guess lacks some of the reach, because Hunter can go face with things like Kill Command and the Hero Power, but that really only matters by turn 9. Really the only time like a taunt that stands any chance of stopping you is going to come down as a Warlock's Void Lord. You don't really need over taunt minion reach, and the Aggro Paladin deck has like Blessing of Kings anyway. You just mow down whenever they play. So that sort of edge that the class Hunter has over the class Paladin doesn't really matter, and then they just do less of a good job getting like filling up the board, and they don't have Called Arms.
Yeah, Called Arms is a really big deal.
It's I think better than To My Side, in case that wasn't established.
Yeah, I mean, surprisingly though, To My Side is a card that I lost to a bunch in the first day.
I'm impressed that actual zero minion spell hunter was doing something.
Yeah, I'm not at all surprised that it didn't last, but I mean, I'm not seeing it anymore, at least not high ranks. But I definitely lost a lot to it. I think that deck was really riding on the back of Emerald Spellstone.
Yeah, if you don't get a copy of that early, you're just not really doing anything.
Yes,
And if they
exactly. Yeah,
wipe
you're
it,
doing right. And it was pretty easy to wipe. I mean, I would just play, at that point I was playing Dragon Priest, and Dustbreaker is just loves when the opponent plays that card. Loves when it plays to my side also, actually.
yeah,
But yeah, so Hunter has, sort of a medium aggro deck right now, and it has a spell build which I think is more cute than good. It just runs, tons of secrets and just kind of slow, derpy deck. But
yeah, I saw that once more at like rank 4. That's about it.
yeah, um, I think those are mostly the playable classes. So there's three that there's three classes that don't really have amazing decks right now. Um, and I guess we can go in order of sort of worst to best of the losers. The worst being a shaman, I think. I don't think I've seen any shamans this
Yeah,
expansion.
Shaman died. Rip
Yeah,
Shaman.
I Ripperino. Yeah, I think I've seen literally zero.
There's just not quite anything as unfair in Shaman as what you can do in Warlock. You know,
Yeah.
or as far as silly things like there's Grumble. There's the Murmuring Elemental that will double a battle cry. None of it's as good as the other ridiculous things the control classes could do.
Yeah, and also yeah, so definitely like doesn't have a good late game shell, and it's been in that position for a really long time. But the playable shaman deck has always just been this token shaman deck, though I think that that was always riding on the back of just having a strong early game, and that it did when everybody was playing Kelesith or back when Murloc Paladin was Murloc Paladin Pirate Warrior were some of the fastest decks. Like the fact that it could just produce random taunts was awesome against Pirate Warrior, and Murloc Paladin wasn't super duper fast, so it could deal with that. But right now, I think that it doesn't even have the strongest early game anymore, and that's all it had going for it.
Yep. I mean, yeah, it could like sort of always have some game with evolve effects and doppelgangster, but um, now you can beat that with divine favor. Like if you want a way to reset, the
Yeah,
other faster classes can do that now. So it sort of lost all of its gimmicks.
yeah, and the control decks just don't care about Doppelgangster Evolve at all, because at that point they all have board wipes that are turned on. So it's really unfortunate, but that deck is just not positioned well. Maybe we'll see another deck in the future. Maybe like I know that the Jelly Shaman, Jade Elemental Shaman, is really good when aggro is good. So if everybody starts playing aggro, that deck might see play. But I think that other decks probably just do better than that against aggro decks, like maybe Dragon Priest.
Yeah, I don't expect to see Thrall for a while.
Yeah, he looks like he really sort of is in the dumpster this expansion.
He didn't even have
Um,
a breakout silly deck. Warrior at least had one of those.
yeah, Warrior is sort of another loser here. Garrosh has been in the trash since Firewax, or RIP Firewax. But Warrior at least had the gather the party, recruit warrior, big warrior deck, which is cute.
Yeah, that was definitely the Dragon Hatcher combo with Master Oakheart was really cool. Dragon Hatcher's
Mm.
a 9-mana 2/4. Says at the end of your turn you put a dragon from your deck into play. And then you also use Drakari Enchanter, which is not a new card, but you also might not know what it does, because it's pretty bad generally. It's the 3-mana 1/5. It says your end of turn effects happen twice. So we got a 1 power guy, we got a 2 power guy. The trick is to play Master Oakheart, and then at the end of your turn you get 2 dragons.
That's so silly.
And then you play a bunch of big dragons like Deathwing the Second and Primordial Drakes and stuff. And you might be saying, well, Evan, what do you do if you get all your dragons and all your dragon hatchers in your hand? That's why they invented Dead Man's Hand. It's kind of hilarious how it all kind of comes together, but I think
Yeah.
it just isn't like fast enough or impactful enough because I haven't seen it since it was being ridiculous the first day or two.
Yeah, I think with those big decks, like you really need to get these things out like early, and Big Priest can do that. It can Barnes and then Eternal Servitude, and this deck just doesn't have Eternal Servitude.
Yeah, it doesn't have a way to continue to cheat them out.
Yeah, it sounds like Dead Man's Hand is a way to sort of gas back up, which is awesome because the when you play Big Priest, there's just a point where your charge stops pulling anything, and like at that point, your deck is starting to run out of steam, and you're really leaning on res effects. But Dead Man's Hand means you can continue to recruit stuff, which is cool.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's good, but it's cool.
Yeah, Dead Man's Hand is still not doing anything, which is still a problem. But yeah,
Yeah,
and then yeah, Pirate Warrior I think just falls behind all these new aggro decks.
yeah, it's a shame. I have two golden Azaz first mates, and they're just sort of collecting dust.
Arr.
Yeah, um, not literally though. I would never dust that. But yeah, that's sort of. I mean, it's not like that sad because we're still seeing tons of pirates. It's not like there's a shortage of pirates around. Turns out Patches is just one of the best cards in Hearthstone, so we're still seeing plenty of that.
I'm sure if you see a
Drew,
Pirate Warrior deck on ladder or an aggro shaman deck, they'll be using Corridor Creeper.
yeah, I definitely have seen Pirate Warrior builds with like Kelesith, and they totally were using Gordo Creeper. Uh, Druid is probably the other loser here. So on the first couple days, especially at low ranks, I heard a bunch of people talking about like decks running Master Oakheart and a bunch of like the recruit taunt minion, like the 8 mana. Let me like scroll up so I can get its stats right. I stopped seeing it, so I have no idea what this card does
I
anymore.
think it's an 8
Um,
mana 3/5.
it is. It's Grizzled Guardian, 8 mana, 3/5 taunt, Death Rattle. Recruit 2 minions that cost 4 or less. So they were playing like Grizzled Guardian and Hadronox and like Ironbark Golems, and just creating a taunt wall that once you destroyed it, created another taunt wall.
Sounds fun. I
Um,
mean, I love Hadronox as a card.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It looked more fun than good. I lost to it once because it was insane, but I pretty much only saw it one time and then never saw it again. I'm sure that the deck just does mostly nothing most games.
Yeah, it mostly is just a do absolutely nothing deck. Um, I was playing Jade Druid for a while after the set came out, and it was doing well.
Yeah, I could see that. I was thinking, I was kind of like theory crafting a Jade Druid deck with the what is that card? It's the rare that costs 0. The arcane, no, it's an epic Arcane Tyrant. So the 5 mana 4/4 costs 0 if you played if you cast a spell that costs 5 or more this turn.
Hmm.
So I was thinking about running that and Corridor Creepers and like maybe even Patches to try to be a little bit more like tempo based. But I don't know if that's actually good. Probably is not.
Yeah, I think that ultimately too many of the control decks can kind of like get you, like with
Yeah.
the Doomguard Cube thing, or even Razakus can get you if you're not operating quickly enough. Um,
Yeah, Psychic Scream can own you if you have Jade Golems in your deck.
oh yeah, that's especially that really does not work out for you. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, the Tyrant's cool because you can play it off not just UI but also Nourish.
definitely.
Uh,
And Spreading Plague.
oh yeah, Spreading Plague as well. So that is cool. Um, but it didn't. It just doesn't seem quite like if you're gonna play something slow, you'd rather have more board wipes because
Yeah.
it is really weak to something like Aggro Paladin, Jade
Oh
Druid.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. You just don't really have that many ways to do it, and like you have to run Tar Creeper, and the deck doesn't actually have that much room for flex cards, so it's like it's got a lot of deck constraints. I think that like relative to decks with that many deck constraints, it has a lot of flex slots, but just in general, relative to every deck, there's not a lot of cards that can change in the deck. So
Yeah,
that means that it's hard to tune yourself to beat decks that are running Void Lord and decks that are running like 12 1-drops.
yeah, you're gonna have a bad time. You
Yep.
know,
Um,
once you start trying to treat things like Jade Spirit as flex slots, the deck just do what it's supposed to do anymore.
Yeah, it starts falling apart, and that's not. There's like a certain level of consistency you need in your strategy, and that means you have to include a relatively large core package, and that just like that hurts. That hurts that deck. It's like that. That also hurts Taunt Warrior. Like these are archetypes that exist in the wings, and you know what the lists look like, but the list just isn't good right now, and you can't really change up the list that much.
Yeah,
So
I wonder would Taunt Warrior be good? I mean, it would be good against the Aggro Paladin deck.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that could deal with like cube lock,
Yeah,
and I
that
feel
would be
like
tough. Yeah, it just has no game against Infinite Void Lords.
yeah, and I feel like you probably also just lose to Rizakis.
Yeah, that deck got very very strong.
Yeah, because like especially the cycling builds could they could just like face tank all of your taunt minions the entire game and just use all their resources to draw cards and kill you. And you would need to like basically not draw and trigger your request super early in order to have a chance.
Yeah, their Sulfuris is better than yours.
Yeah, definitely. So that's interesting. But oh yeah, so it's actually something that's worth pointing out. I guess I could have pointed out earlier is there's kind of two builds of Rizakis right now that are running around and good actually. So there's the Cycle Rizakis build, which is pretty much exactly what you're used to from the last expansion, but there's also a build that's more tempo oriented and runs dragons in it.
That's cool. I think I've only been seeing the control one.
Yeah, mostly that's what I'm seeing as well. But I have definitely seen some of the dragons, mostly at rank 4.
I mean, I've been playing an aggro-ish list before the expansion. Now it could use Corridor Creeper.
Yep. Yeah, certainly. I mean that card's really good. So that's worth pointing out. But yeah, I mean, so those are sort of the classes and the decks we've been seeing. I think that there are some themes, and we covered a lot of them while we were discussing each of the decks, but there's some sort of additional themes you wanted to hammer home. And I think that one of them is that Recruit just is way stronger than it looked.
Because, part of it, I think, is how much control you have over what you're going to get.
Yeah, definitely. So all the control occurs at sort of the deck building stage, but that's ultimately fine. You can build, there's enough support, especially because the card pool is like as large as it's going to be in Standard right now. There's a lot of support for, a deck that's built around using some recruit card to cheat out a particular minion and do a particular thing, like Master Oakheart to get out the thing that's recruiting dragons, or to recruit like Void Lords or Rins and stuff like that. There's enough other cards that you can build a deck with enough support to make that package work, and also just be a functional deck. So all the flexibility and power you get in controlling what you're recruiting is like at its best right now, because you can support a whole lot of packages.
Yeah, and like they're also like the first recruit card that we saw was this Gather Your Party, which had no constraints. The constraints on them have proven to be really, really great. You don't when you play Call to Arms, you don't accidentally hit your Stonehill defenders. Not that I'm playing that card, but I still want to play a card with a deck with both of those cards in it. But the fact that you can count on getting these Knife Jugglers and these minions with charge from your Call to Arms, or Possess Lackey, you can still play a whole bunch of other minions, and then use Possess Lackey to do really unfair stuff.
Sure.
It looked like if things were going to be like all the things were going to be a lot like Gather Your Party, or even the other one we saw early on, Guild Recruiter. That one also is like too broad. If it's recruiting something that costs 4 or less, it's a 5 mana 2/4 that recruits something that costs 4 or less. You basically don't want to play anything that costs 1 through 3. You just want to play things that cost 4 at that point. So those were too broad. But Call to Arms and Possess Lackey, that actually you can still play a whole slew of other various minions that do a whole bunch of stuff, and still get your recruit effect to do exactly what you need it to. And in the case of Possess Lackey, it's very specific. You got this.
Yes.
It's like, like Clown Car combo with cubes and Dark Pact and Doomguard, and some of your cards are going to make you discard other parts of the combo. It's like such a it doesn't seem like it should ever work. But Possessed Lackey carries a lot of weight in that deck, I think.
Yeah, it really pulls it together. I think that as far as recruit goes, like, it's interesting because Gather Your Party is the least restricted recruit effect. Is just recruit a minion, any minion in your deck at all. That has the most deck building constraints. As you add restrictions to the types of minions that you can recruit, you remove deck building constraints from yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little paradoxical.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a way, the least restrictive recruit cards are the ones with the most recruit restrictions on them. And that's actually good, though, because it means that, if you have one that recruits a minion in a very specific mana cost range, it means you could run like whatever minions you want outside of that mana cost range, and that could shore up both your late and your early game, but you have your combo package happening in a very specific part of your curve, and your recruit cards interact with that part of your curve.
Yeah, that's exactly what Lackey is doing.
Yeah, and it's that's exactly right. So Lackey is just like not interfering with anything else you might be running, like a Tark Reaper, if you happen to run that card. Yeah, it's good. It's been a strong effect. We've seen it in a lot of classes. A lot of the silly decks in a lot of classes are running like Master Oakheart and other stuff, other recruit class specific cards, but also real decks like the Cube Lock deck and the Paladin deck running, Call to Arms, which I think is just by far the best recruit card.
Easily.
Yeah, it's amazing how strong it is. I was trying to think about how strong it would actually be if you hit 3/1 drops and just sort of consistently underestimating the card, but it turned out to be insane.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of one thing I didn't appreciate is how many really big hits you can have, like how big a hit one Righteous Protector is. And I definitely have gotten 2 Righteous Protectors off of it. I was like, I was definitely going to lose. Like, I was gone, and I got 4 attacks of theirs canceled. I was like, oh, well, in that case, I guess I'll win.
Right. It's that pretty much every time I cast it, I'm hoping I get a Righteous Protector.
It'll defend your Knife Juggler that you get. They're just best friends.
It's a really, really, really strong card, and I think it's going to be sort of metagame defining because of how strong a tempo play it is and how well it synergizes with a lot of other things that Paladin is good at. It just so a card that was one of my pet cards for a while and just was never good was Small Time Recruits.
Yeah.
And when you look at Call to Arms, you put Call to Arms right next to Small Time Recruits. It's just it's clear as day how Small Time Recruits should have been designed. And it's like this, or maybe slightly worse than this.
Yeah, Small Time Recruits should have been more recruity.
Yeah, exactly. Enough. Yeah, it doesn't recruit them; it puts them in your hand.
Ironically, and so yep. the class is like Druid. Its recruit effects are very broad. It got a bunch of the recruit something that cost 4 or less. Hunter got recruit a beast for 8 mana. Once again, in Hunter that's very broad. You would very much like to be playing a bunch of inexpensive beasts. So I think those classes that got these really broad recruit effects were hurt for that reason. And part of the reason why Paladin and Warlock are doing so well is because they got these more controlled, more narrow recruit effects.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It must have been a cool mechanic to sort of design and balance, mm-hmm. but that's not at all how I expected it to shake out.
No, and probably one of the best things about the mechanic and one of the reasons why you can't really judge it yet is because it will change so much every time a new set of cards comes out. Every time there's a new round of 4 drops, the Druid cards have a whole new opportunity to get much better. For example.
Yeah, and that's really important. That these cards will just their value will change over time. So that's pretty cool. One thing that I think a lot of people really dislike, and I definitely do, are sort of parasitic mechanics. Jades are probably one of the biggest examples. These are cards that sort of only interact with each other. So after the Jade cards were printed in Mean Streets, there's never going to be another new Jade card. So when you see a Jade deck, you already know most of the cards it's running, and they're mostly in Mean Streets of Catches Them.
Yeah.
The recruit effects are not parasitic at all, which is awesome. So they will interact with whatever new cards are are released, and they'll get better or worse depending on what's in the card pool and what you need to play in your deck and what you should be playing, what other people are playing. And that's awesome, because then you have to reevaluate these cards every time a set comes out, and you have to consider them when you're evaluating new cards.
Yeah, like every time you see a new 2-drop, you're like, well, how is this going to affect Call to Arms? And,
Right.
you know, like,
I'm,
so the bad 4-mana Druid recruit cards might get better when new cards come out, but Call to Arms can also get better. As much as it's really good right now, that card can also improve, which is kind of crazy to think about.
yeah, I'm sure that Blizzard is sitting there like, man, what did we
No,
do?
I do not see Possessed Lackey getting any better. I don't think they're going to make
No.
any more demons that work better with it than Void Lord does.
Yeah, I think Voidlord and Doomguard are sort of the pinnacle of that card, which is fine.
It's nice
Um,
that peak is above the clouds. That's totally fine.
Yep, definitely. So Recruit ended up being really strong. As far as the breakout like neutral cards, because every expansion has some neutrals that are really good. Last expansion it was Bone Mare. Um, I think the biggest one is obviously Corridor.
Another 7-mana 5/5,
Yes, yeah, they love making those.
though not
Um,
common this time around.
no, sadly, Corridor Creeper is an epic. But ultimately, I think that's okay, because so much of the power in the set is actually concentrated in the epics rather than the legendaries.
Yeah, that's
So
definitely
I think
nice.
I think it's like kind of okay for them to have more epics that are sort of must-haves. I'm fine with that. But yeah, Quarter Creeper is a card that we both missed in our set review.
Yeah, it just seems so
It looked
innocuous.
Yeah, it just looked like I don't know, like we've had similar cards in the past, Volcanic Drake, but it turns out that when the cost reduction is permanent, the card just becomes a lot better.
Yeah, I forgot about Drake. Um,
It's very forgettable.
and I mean, I didn't forget about Solemn Vigil, but yeah, that was definitely one of the things that made Solemn Vigil good, was that their guys dying counted, but I never even
Right.
thought to make that comparison.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the Corridor Creeper is just like excellent, and I think it's just kind of the best card that we've seen with this type of effect on it. And yeah, actually, I forgot all about Solemn Vigil, and I kind of wish I didn't, because that card's awesome and I want it back. But yeah, the Creeper is probably the best neutral card. Another one that we missed was Spiteful
Yeah,
Summoner.
that one we might have mentioned it, but I actually saw that a bunch of times on ladder, and it was pretty good.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of people running it just like I've seen people run it, in Priest with Mind Control and as their only spell, and they'll run Spiteful Summoner in there, and you just like get to cheat on mana. You get, a 4/4 plus a random 10 drop, which is
Yeah,
insane.
Spiteful Summoner
Uh,
is 6 mana for 4/4 Battle Cry. Reveal a random spell in your deck. You get a random minion of the same cost. So
right.
it's a 4/4 stapled onto another minion. If you just only run a 10 cost spell, it's a 6 mana 10 cost minion, which is pretty good.
Right.
Plus
Plus
a
a
4/4
4/4.
bonus Azure Drake.
Yeah, so you get a ton of stats for the amount of mana you're spending, and that's often enough. So I've seen that. Also, I've seen that in a slower Murloc Paladin deck that runs Dino
Oh
Size.
my god.
It also runs Call to Arms, so you have a bit of a whiff there. But like, spending 6 mana for a random 4 drop and a 4/4 is not horrendous, but it's not amazing either.
Yeah, it might
Uh,
not be worth the deck constraint. I'd seen
yeah.
it in like, yeah, Dragon Priest with Free from Amber, though they might have been running Free from Amber and Mind Control. I
Mm.
think there's probably also a list that's using Grand Archivist, which is an 8 mana 5/7 that says at the end of your turn you play a random spell from your deck. So with Mind
Ah.
Control, you just get a 5/7 and an 8 mana Mind Control. Can you imagine Mind Control at 8 mana? What a preposterous idea!
Yeah, that is kind of
Only a
gross.
fool would
Uh,
make Mind Control 8 mana.
I mean, it has like random targets though.
Yeah, granted, the Mind Control would be random, but it'll never hit your own guys. So I
Yeah,
think that
that's true.
um, the yeah, it doesn't beat a board of minions, but if they have like even a couple of guys that are reasonable, stealing one and getting a 5/7 is almost always gonna be like Priest's ultimate infestation.
Oh yeah. So actually, speaking of that, there's something I sort of wish I mentioned earlier. Regarding the Dragon Priest decks, they have a really cool combo built in there. Twilight Acolyte, the 3 mana 2/4 that like you swap its power with the power of another creature when it comes into play. Battlecry. If you're holding a dragon, you do that. Um, that combos really well with Cabal Shadow Priest.
Oh, that's rude. Oh, and Potion of Madness, but wow, yeah, you can steal anything.
Yeah. So I've been. I don't think I ever managed to get a Void Lord. Um, but I do think I've got Obsidian Statue with that. Yeah. So it's I mean that's like a neat little combo. While we're on the topic of mind control, I figured I'd bring that up.
Yeah, 9 mana 9 control.
Yeah, yeah. So it's pretty interesting. That card is like Cabal Shadow Priest got kind of a lot better and is definitely worth playing in some of the tempo based shells. But yeah, so Spiteful Summoner, Corridor Creeper, probably the best neutral cards in the set. Others that are good, like Plated Beetle, which is one you mentioned. I've seen a bunch of Warlock decks.
Yeah, I've been seeing him here and there too. That makes me smile.
Yeah, I think it's a good card. It's not like what aggro wants. It's not better than Glocker Crawler for aggressive decks, but for slower decks that actually care about the life, it's pretty awesome.
He's also,
Um,
I definitely played against a Razakis deck that brought it back with Twilight's Call. And that was cute.
oh, that is cute. That's a lot of armor. Um, but yeah, I think that's what the earliness of this set looks like. What we've seen so far, all the decks and the strong stuff, and where we are surprised.
Yeah, the middle lane seems to not be very strong, which I think tends to be how it is at the beginning. You either want a really ridiculous, powerful control deck or the really, really fast to the face aggro deck.
Yeah,
I think for if you're just gonna want to climb and try to climb fast, um, the latter aggro paladin's probably the way to go. Get some fast, easy wins in there.
yeah, definitely. It's going to be, in the mirror, it's going to be kind of draw dependent. But if you're smart about trading, you can win the mirror, regularly, and it's going to punish people who are playing slower, greedy decks. So, and it looks like there's no like aggro crushers out right now. There's none that are just like overtly amazing that are playable. Like Taunt Warrior just loses to all the control decks, and I think the Taunt Druid deck is just like probably also loses to all the control decks.
Certainly.
So you're probably not going to see any decks like that that are out to hunt you. And I think that the decks that are going to be out to hunt you are probably going to be mid-range decks, maybe dragons or some other kind of deck. So yeah, I think that's a really good place to go if you want to just get some free low.
But there's also, I mean, if you want to play with carnivorous cubes that eat demons and poop more demons out, that seems like a legitimate life choice right now. I don't know how often that happens.
Yeah, probably not very very often. You have the option to do
This
that.
is my first time.
I think the deck also runs like Death Speaker Umbra, so
I was trying to think of the other ridiculous stuff in the list besides like Rin and Master Oakheart. And yep, another like let's throw this legendary in there too.
yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of dumb cards in Control Warlock right now. So if you want to play the dumbest cards in your set, just play in your collection. Just play that deck. Um, yeah, I think that's about the early metagame right now.
Yeah, and whether or not Spiteful Summoner is really gonna be a thing is yet to be seen. As far like it seemed good, but it's also a pretty real constraint. So I don't know how much that's gonna stick around, but definitely expect a lot more Corridor Creeper. That's when next time you go to trade something, stop and think about all wormy.
Yeah, I feel like Spiteful Summoner might get better as more expensive spells come out.
Yeah, that's another kind of effect that will change.
Yeah. It kind of depends on. I think it depends. It's definitely something to keep your eye on, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was a deck that's really good that kind of with staying power that plays it either now or in the future. You think that's a good place to wrap up?
I think we got it. I'm excited to see how and where it goes from here.
Yeah, definitely. The early part of a new metagame is always really interesting, and we're coming off the back of a pretty interesting like mid-range style metagame in Knights of the Frozen Throne, and I think that this really is starting to shake that up quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping for a big change. I was not a big fan of the Frozen Throne metagame at all. So it's cool to see some new stuff right now. I'm really stoked about it.
Yeah, we're finally thawing out.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to stay warm, you can find us on twitter.com/LastTurnHS. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/LastTurnHS. As always, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play. You can find links to all of those on our website, which is lastturnhs.com. We have a YouTube channel, and you can find our podcast uploaded there if you prefer it in YouTube in some sort of playlist format or anything. You can engage with us on Twitter. We're active in sort of various communities, so you can find us all over the internet.
Even places you don't want to.
Yeah, absolutely. You might even... Yeah, you can find us on pornhub.com/LastTurnHS. That's not true.
Someone's going to try. There's going to be that one guy, I couldn't find the link.
Godspeed to that guy. I hope you didn't try at work. But anyway, yeah, so we will catch you guys next turn.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next turn.